Hi guys, this is the video for lesson 26, session 1. We are beginning this very important lesson, so I'm glad you've made it here. I'm glad you're watching this video. We're going to start learning about decimals. So we're going to be looking at fractions and changing them into decimals, or starting to understand decimals. That's very important, and I'm glad you're watching this video because decimals are a big thing in 5th grade. So when you get to Mr. Smotch's class next year in 5th grade, he's going to be excited that you did this lesson, that you watched these videos, because you start off in 5th grade, like they expect you to understand what a decimal is, because you're going to have to start adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing decimals. But if you get there and you're like, what do you mean decimal? What's a decimal? Then that's going to be much harder for you, right? So it's a good thing you're watching this video. Let's get started. This is the family letter about the lesson. So if you want to tear that out and give that to your family, that'd be great. On the back is an activity you can do all about money if you'd like to. But the actual lesson in session 1 begins on page 535. All right, let's get started. You know how to write equivalent fractions with denominators of 10 and 100. In this lesson, you will learn another way to write these fractions. Use what you know to try to solve the problem below. Okay, so this is about money, pennies specifically. So don't worry about decimals yet. Just try and answer the question with your real world knowledge about money and pennies and dollars, okay? It says, Max has 248 pennies. How many whole dollars does Max have? What fraction of a dollar is left over? Okay, so if you want to try and solve it on your own, you can. So I know that $1 equals how many pennies? Because it's asking how many whole dollars does Max have. So $1 is how many pennies? It doesn't say it in the problem. I should just know this. 100, right? So if Max has 248 pennies, then those 200 pennies equals $2. I don't know why I'm writing all crooked, sorry. Like slanted up. So he has 248, but 200 of those would be the $2, 2 full dollars. So he has 2 whole dollars. So there's part of my answer. He has $2. But what fraction of a dollar is left over? Okay, so if he had 248 and we take away the 200 pennies, because that's the 2 whole dollars, I'm left with 48. So he has 48 pennies left after we take out those $2. 48 pennies. I know that 100 pennies is 1 full dollar, so what fraction of $1 is left over? So my denominator would be 100, because there's 100 pennies in $1, and he has 48. So he has 48 hundredths of a dollar left over. Okay, so I just have a lot of information all over the place, so let's answer this in sentences. Max has 2 whole dollars. He has 48 hundredths of a dollar left over. Okay. Pause it if you need to catch up on that page. Let's answer some questions about it on the back. Page 536. Okay, connect it, look back. Write the dollars and fraction of a dollar Max has as a mixed number. So all that means is he had 2 whole dollars, and what was the fraction part? 48 hundredths. It's a mixed number because there's a whole number and a fraction part, right? So that's it for number 1. 2 and 48 hundredths. Number 2, look ahead. Fractions with denominators 10 and 100 can be written as decimals. The models show the fraction 48 hundredths. So this model right here shows 48 hundredths because there's 1, 2, 3, 4 columns and then 8 ones left over. So there's 48 out of the 100. Now they just have this little arrow, and this is the same model, but that column is just broken up into a full tenth. Okay, so they just took the 10 little ones and made it one full bar, one full column, and that's a tenth. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 tenths, and 8 hundredths would be 48 hundredths, okay? So 48 hundredths is, there were 4 tenths and 8 hundredths left over. So we're just filling in the blanks. B, write the mixed number 2 and 48 hundredths as a decimal in the place value chart below. So this is a place value chart like what we saw at the beginning of the year when we started 4th grade math. We started with place value, but it was only this side of the chart. It went ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions. Okay, so it was all this way. Now we're gonna see what's the part smaller than one whole on this side, okay? So just imagine it. Going the other direction would be over here, tens, and then hundreds, okay? It goes on that way. That's the part we know over here. This is the part we have to learn. So the ones is the whole number part of, grab a highlighter. Okay, so this is the number we want to put in our place value chart. 2 and 48 hundredths. Okay, so what's my whole number? 2. There's 2 ones. Here's the decimal point. That separates my whole numbers from my fraction part. So like the decimal would go in between. How many tenths was it? 4 tenths. How many hundredths? 8. Okay, so this is what my place value chart would look like for that fraction. So 2 and 48 hundredths equals 2 and 48 hundredths. So here it is as a fraction, here it is as a decimal. This is the exact same thing as this. Okay, C is, we're going to fill in the blanks exactly the same way we just did here. And this is the way that you would say the fraction, okay? So, whole number part in word form. So think back, what's word form? It's writing the numbers in word. So I'm not going to write the number 2, I'm going to write the word 2. The decimal point says and. Part less than 1 in word form, and then the place value name of the last digit. So part less than 1 in word form. That's just, how do you say this number? 48, right? 48. And then place value name of the last digit. So I don't end here in tenths, I ended here in hundredths. So that's the place value name. The last spot on my place value chart that has a digit in it is the hundredths. Hundredths. So it's not hundreds, it's hundredths. Okay, so the way we're going to say this decimal is 2 and 48 hundredths. That's how you say that. And that's how we would say it as a fraction, right? 2 and 48 hundredths. 2 and 48 hundredths. It's the same thing. Just remember that the decimal point says and, not point. We do not say 2.48. Okay, I know that's very common. That's what most people do. I have a hard time not saying that. I have to teach myself to say and for the decimal because it's a bad habit. So it's 2 and 48 hundredths. Okay? But if it was just that 2.4, my last place value would not be hundredths. My last place value would be tenths. So this decimal would be 2 and 4 tenths, right there. But since I have that 8 in the hundredth spot, it's 2 and 48 hundredths, okay? So we're gonna get a lot more practice with decimals. I know it might be a bit confusing about how to read a decimal or how to convert a fraction to a decimal, but that's what this whole lesson is, the next 4 videos, this one and 3 more, I think. Okay, so we're gonna skip the reflect question down on the bottom and we're gonna go straight to the practice page right here, okay? Page 536. In the middle of the chart is the word decimal. So, in your own words, how would you explain a decimal? Okay, so you can copy what I'm gonna say or you can make up your own explanation. I'm gonna say it's a number with a decimal point. Decimal point is just like the period, right? Decimal point that separates the ones place and the tenths place. Okay, it's not the tens place, that's the other direction. Okay, see back on my place value chart, here's my decimal point. It's separating the ones and the tenths, not the tens, tenths, okay? Ones, decimal point, tenths, then hundredths. On the other side, it goes ones, tens, hundreds, and so on. But this is the part we're worrying about now. This is the part we're worrying about. Okay, back to my chart. Illustration, so drawings. I could just recreate a place value chart. It's kind of hard to draw a decimal. Please don't just draw a dot, that would be funny, but don't do that. Okay, I'm drawing my place value chart. So right here is going to be my ones place. Next is my decimal point, so it's just going to be period, and then it's tenths and hundredths. Okay, so there's my place value chart for decimals. Get used to writing that. Maybe my decimal is going to be 3 and 56 hundredths. I'm going to write that in word form. 3 and 56 hundredths. You can do whatever numbers in there you'd like, but make sure that you wrote it the same. 3 and 56 hundredths is just my last place value in the chart. What if there wasn't any hundredths? Then it would just be 3 and 5 tenths. Okay? Examples of decimals. Maybe 7 and 5 tenths. This is just one without a whole number, so it's just the fractional part, just the decimal. So that would just be 12 hundredths, like 12 hundredths. I'll do the fractions that they equal. 7 and 5 tenths. that would be that. What about, that one's tricky. 6 and 8 hundredths, because that's that place value. Here's the ones, decimal point, tenths, hundredths. So I have an 8 in my hundredths place. So it's 6 and 8 hundredths. 6 and 8 hundredths. So you say it exactly the same way as you write it in a fraction, okay? So these are my examples of decimals, the ones with the decimal point, not the fractions. I'm just showing you what they equal, okay? So these are not decimals, these are fractions, these are decimals. Non-examples. 1/4, that's not a decimal. 5, not a decimal. 6/10, not a decimal, that's just the fraction. I could show that as a decimal, but 6/10 just written like this as a fraction is not a decimal. It has to have a decimal point. Okay? Number 2, fill in the blanks to tell how to read the decimal like that. If I say it, you're going to know how to write it. So there's a 1 in the ones place, a decimal point, a 3 in the tenths place, and a 2 in the hundredths place. So I know it's early on in this lesson, but do you think you know how to say that? This helps you out. Whole number part in word form. So what's my whole number? 1. The decimal point always says and. Part less than 1 in word form. So after the decimal point, what number is that? How do you just say that? 32. 32. And then my place value name. Here's ones, tenths, hundredths. So it goes all the way to hundredths. Hundredths. It's just the word hundred plus the THS. Just like tenths is the word 10 and THS. So to say this decimal, you would say 1 and 32 hundredths. Hopefully that's making some sense to you. Pause this page if you need it. We just have the back page to do. Okay, this one's exciting. This one's about Layla in our class. Just kidding. Different Layla. Okay, Layla has 323 pennies. How many whole dollars does Layla have? What fraction of a dollar is left over? Okay, so she has 323 pennies. Okay, 300 pennies, 300 of those would equal $3, right? Since 100 pennies equals $1. So if I take away 300 from that, I do the total number of pennies she has minus the 300, 23 pennies left. So 23 pennies out of 100 for $1 is the fraction of a dollar she has left. So she has $3 and 23 hundredths of a dollar left over. Okay, so Layla, I wrote this one a little higher because it might be 2 lines. Layla has $3 and 23 hundredths of a dollar left over. Okay, down here, we're not going to check your answer. We're going to write it as a decimal. So I crossed out what it said for number 4. We're not checking our answer. We're going to write that as a decimal. Okay, so She has $3, so that's $3. And then the fractional part is 23 hundredths. So here it is as a fraction, right? $3, 23 hundredths of a dollar left over. Okay, so in my place value chart, or in my decimal, my whole number is 3. Then remember, between the whole number and the fractional part would be my decimal point. And then it's 23 hundredths. So I know the first place value is tenths, the second one is hundredths. So it's 23 hundredths, so 23 hundredths. And then, just for kicks, I'm going to write it in word form. 3 and, the decimal always says and, 23 hundredths, because it's that place value. Hundredths. Okay, and that's it. If it's still confusing, that's okay. This is just the very first day we are ever talking about fractions in 4th grade math. So we've got a couple more days to continue this lesson, and then lesson 27 is the last one in this workbook. See you guys in the next video. Miss you.